Hello everyone, I'm Anurag, the founder of News-Genix.
Hi everyone, I'm Nishtha Sen, founder of Light and Life, and we are honored to have you, sir.
So today we have an eminent personality with us, Mr. Victor Ochen. He is the founder and executive director for African Youth Initiative Network, INET, and he's a UN Peace Ambassador at Uganda. We welcome you, sir. It's a great honor to have you here.
Yeah, it's a joy to take part in this dialogue. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. So I have a question, sir. Can you tell us about your organization, INET, and African Peace Academy as well?
Yeah, my organization, INET, is an indigenous initiative we started in Uganda 15 years ago when we were on the peak of conflict and we wanted to find a reason to mobilize the community, especially youth, to promote peace in a community that was so affected by conflict. And we started the organization to mobilize youth and community in engaging them in peace building processes, but also in promoting the culture of tolerance, promoting the role of young people in accountability and justice and national unity. So we're based in Uganda, work with the youth and also work with the communities. And Peace Academy, African Peace Academy, is one of the initiatives we came up with after 10 years of working in a community. We thought there was been need for us to engage in a platform that brings both traditional African alternative to peace building, as well as the international system, normative system. So we are looking more integrated academic discipline together with the traditional African approach to peace building. So that's why we came up with Peace Academy. It's just a platform to bring people together to dialogue, but also without discriminating that you're educated or uneducated, we are local or urban, you're rural or urban. We just say, let us get a platform that brings all of us together. Yeah.
Great, sir. It's a great service and all. And my next question is about how was your 21 years of refugee life experience and transformation to a peace activist?
Yeah, 21 years of living in conflict means 2 generations almost of 2 decades of conflict in a way that that's a very critical year in life. When you're born a child, the first 18 years is very important. How you're raised matters in terms of how your future becomes. So it definitely was a very difficult moment in life, but also was trying because that was the moment that every child needed to be protected at best, not to be exposed to violence, but to be given more opportunity for best alternatives in life. So it was quite challenging, it was tough, it was deteriorating, it was destructive, morally, socially, academically, as well as it has changed a lot of our outlook of the world, because you would wonder that if the world really cared, 1 year of conflict, you would say the authorities are reassembling their position to become responsive. 2 years, it's they have struggled to contain, but going on for 5 years, for 10 years, for 20 years, it changes the perspective of a child. You start thinking that this is not just a protracted conflict, this is a deliberate conflict. So that's why it was quite important for us to be able to think differently. But in most cases, in that kind of dilemma, you're left with no choice, but you're left to pretty much to whom it may concern. And that became a lot of challenges for myself, but also for the young people. So it was life-changing, but also one thing I learned from it was I became I wanted to become a person I wanted to, but most importantly, I learned that I can be the person I want to be, and I cannot be the person I don't want to be. And I learned so very well the kind of person that I don't ever want to be. That was the biggest learning.
So it's very inspiring, and you have it's true actually. If we face to the struggles that will lead us to the achievement. Like we will be like successful. It's very inspiring, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for the inspiring story. And yes, this must have led you in a lot of conflict between what is exactly the real world and is it even protected? Is it even a place where we can love and have peace and justice? And I'm sure you might have and must have questioned that. So my next question is on that. How important is peace and what is perception of the world when it comes to peace? Why is it hard to be peaceful and easier to be violent? And how can we change that mindset?
Yeah, the world as it is not as beautiful as beds and roses that we see, but also it's a very good place with a lot of you're exposed to so many man-made calamities, then there are natural disasters, and also there are other social disasters that comes in as a result of man-made or cultural or religious disasters. And as you're growing in the world, calamities become so many and more difficult to cope up with, especially if you are at the receiving hands of human or man-made violence or man-made suffering. Calamities become so difficult to manage. And somehow you get to wonder if really the world you're living in is where you are supposed to have been, or if the world you're living in has got a solution to the problems. Yeah, especially when you're a young person, it's a difficult narrative to work with. You are forced to think that you're abandoned, and you're also made to believe that you don't belong. Sometimes you feel you don't belong, you are unwanted, you are not supported, you're discriminated, you're marginalized, and you're excluded. So it's a beautiful world we're in with so much potential. And unfortunately, humanity has become more difficult to manage in the world affairs because they want to thrive at the expense of one another. They are suffering. That sometimes when you're suffering, your cry is seen as like the songs of praises to the beneficiaries. So the louder you cry, sometimes you feel your cry is not going anywhere, or it's providing music for the people who really don't care much. So the question is, where are the people who cares for people who suffered in the hand of those who did not care? That's where we are in. So looking more, picking deeper, thinking better and bigger, you look into, do I have to choose to become one of the persons in the world that cause more suffering, or I can also be one of the persons in the world that should step up and care for people who suffered in the hand of those who did not care. And that's where I chose. My choice was, let me not identify with the strong or the strongest. I want to identify with the poor and identify with the pain of the people. So that's why I chose to be on the side of people who are suffering. I was, I didn't have a much choice, but I chose to belong there. That I belong to this community. Let me work to help this community, primarily to care for those who suffered in the hand of those who did not care. That's why I felt like my world became beautiful only when I started helping people. But before I started helping anybody, I was caught up in anger, I was caught up in frustration, in bitterness, in urge for revenge, to strike back. But when I picked up the move to say that I'm part of the change I'm looking for, therefore I must stand up for what is right, and I must promote what I believe in this case, that I will not give legitimacy to violence, and I will not pick up the gun to fight, and I will not retaliate, but I will pursue justice, and I will stand up for what's right. That is where the world became beautiful to me. But of course, I was born and raised in a world that was all violence. Yeah.
Thank you so much, sir, because that is a beautiful description where we know that we have a choice, but many fail to choose the right thing. They start to give in to violence to actually step on one another for their own benefits. But coming from a place of war and conflict, you chose not to pick up a gun. And that's where the change happened. And I guess that's how our mindset can shift when we start to giving more value rather than just finding benefit and everything. Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
pleasure. Thank you.
So who are your role models and how they inspire you?
Oh yeah, my role models. I know people run to look for the big shots, but if I look more into the history, I grew up where I didn't have access to television, no radio, no newspapers, no nothing. So I literally knew nobody in this world, regardless how big somebody was. Of course, as I got to grow up bigger, I was already, I was presented to the world by my community. So to me, my role models are definitely the poor people at a grassroots level, the people that I grew up identifying them myself with them. And these are the people that we reached a point where we didn't have anything to eat. We're suffering, we're surviving. And our survival didn't need to take the government. It took my friend, my age mate we were playing together with, to share with me the little bit he was having. And I think that act of kindness, that's what I saw at my, very early age, among the peers, among the young people. And this is where I found a lot of strength and resilience and became more accommodative. But of course, as I now got to reach the world, to hear the world, how the world looks like, there are wonderful people in the world. There are wonderful leaders. I learned about Nelson Mandela, Mahatma Gandhi. I learned about so many people. And this became my point of inspiration. But my first role models are my peer, the young people I grew up with, surviving with. And my inspiration always came from my parents. My mother made it very clear that regardless of how small the resources you have, if it is for people, you have to share. You have no choice but to share. And that was clear. And then as I grew bigger in my space of peace building and human rights work, I became the biggest admirer of Archbishop Desmond Tutu of South Africa. So it became like my point of reference. I treat him as my modern, most amazing human. To me, he's a bridge between a human and God. So I really admire him so much.
Yes, sir. Very well said, sir. It's touched my heart actually. We have experiences going on every day, like what we face in life, and that's the
Mhm.
beauty of the humans. From we
Yeah,
learn from each other and all. Yeah.
yeah.
Thank you, sir. And next question is, first, I would like to present before you the stats, which I'm sure you might be aware of, but for the viewers, globally, 35% of women have ever experienced physical or sexual intimate partner violence or
Yeah.
sexual violence by a non partner. At least 200 million women and girls aged 15 to 49 years have undergone female genital mutilation in 31
Mhm.
countries where the practice is concentrated. Half of these countries are in West Africa. Also, as a refugee, the woman must have faced even worse. And because of all these conditions, women empowerment is on the rise. But still, there is a mindset where women are considered inferior and are objectified. What is your take
Mhm.
on rape cases and mutilation of people as a member of Global Advisory Group to the UNHCR on gender, forced displacement, and protection?
Yeah, thank you so much for that question. And it's a very sad and tragic narrative to see how in the world that we are so well off, women have confused, have been confused to be like a challenge instead of being embraced as the key players in global agenda for development. So it's been a tragic narrative that culturally it's been so difficult for women to come to space. Politically, it's been a struggle, and there's now a generational dilemma. The old and young versus each other. So it's been a challenge that women have been subjected and forced to live a very dehumanizing life. But I also saw that changing the last few years. A lot of changes has been made. which is positive. Despite the positive narrative, a lot more is still a disconnect between the international framework, normative frameworks, the UN agenda, the government agenda, the regional economic blocks agenda, and the reality on the ground. I think there is so much empowerment of the grassroots women, but the disconnect comes, how can we support the local empowered grassroots women with the system so that the policy acts, policies in their favor? That's where the challenge has been. But society continues to struggle. And right now, to me, it's not even about advocating for women to be given space. No, it is not about that. It should be bigger than that. What I think is important, it is about advocating for people to understand that without women, no change can happen. I am not pro policy advocacy. It's about we need women representation, we need women present on the table, we need this on. That does not bring about change. As long as the mindset still remains that it is about certain sectors of the society that can only bring about change, women's advocacy will still remain a futile game. So to me, women's situation is actually closer to minority situation. It's also closer to the youth situation. So to me, it's no longer, definitely we need political will, we need cultural will, we need a religious will, and we need economic will in order to embrace and bring on board equal opportunities. And then I would advocate that instead of advocating for more women power, can we talk about intergender co-leadership, promoting intergender co-leadership, as opposed to, I see also people are getting it wrong sometimes, that you find certain position in the United Nations, it's all dominated by women. And you find other powerful position by United Nations, all people and men. So we are creating different hierarchies and different paddocking system where women live in their own, men live in their own. I don't think that is going right. If it was about women present, women participation, by now a change would have happened. Just because we have not been able to coexist and co-lead, that's where the problem has been. So to me, it's about intergender, promoting intergender co-leadership. That is going to attract women participation alongside men, also men participation alongside women. And then we need to go away from this narrative that that makes or maybe isolates men or stigmatizes men. Because one thing I also know that it has become extremely difficult for a man to discuss gender issue. It is too sensitive right now. Anything you say, you're right or wrong. So because there are those forces, they are ready to attack you, ready to say everything. That because I think when activism misses the intersectionalities, that's where we go wrong. We are bringing gender fights as opposed to gender dialogue. So it has become extremely difficult for men to talk about gender, because regardless of what you say, you will be misunderstood and you will be attacked, or you will be. So the question is, are we going to create an environment where men are not able to speak about gender? The answer is no. We should have a dialogue. We should talk. We should dialogue among ourselves. This applies also to the young people. This concept of saying, let us have transition from youth to, from old people to young people, leadership. While I think it's important for young people to come on board and lead, but it is very important to not miss out on the old wisdoms of solidarity that is there in the mature people. And also, this would be an opportunity to influence and shape the progressive insights of young generation. Let's not miss that old wisdom. Let us not miss that old guidance. Let us not miss that old opportunity. They have learned something. We have to pick from that. But if you're saying time has come for the old people to hand over power and go where? They're not supposed to go. We have to keep them. We have to live together. So that's why I'm advocating for intergenerational co-leadership too. Let us bring old and young and we live together. That is better than saying old people go away, young people take on. No way, we're not going to change anything. The same comes to religion. What about Muslim? What about Christian? What about Hindus? Come on, can we have a platform where we can all coexist? It's only through coexistence that we can co-lead, that can bring about development. But as long as we say, let's create a parallel women's line, parallel men's line, religious group A, B, C, different lines, I think we're dividing the world, and we are going to tackle nothing except attack each other, and that will take us nowhere. So to me, that is very, very important, that women issues should not be about filling the position, should be about everybody understanding the necessity and the importance of having women fully on board. That's how we can bring about positive change. And I think this is what we should advocate for. Thank you.
That was wonderful and touching, like personally to me, because here we are always stigmatizing the issue, and men and women are not able to talk because it's like peace talks. They are only there in a conflict when they're talking about such issues. And unless we are able to understand their mindset, we cannot change it. So first we need to discuss, like even with men, even with peers, like how we are discussing. So once that peace come amongst this, like coexistence, co-leadership, I guess that's a beautiful scenario where this can actually take place and change the root cause of something rather than surface layer. Thank you, sir.
Exactly. Thank you. Welcome.
Yes, sir, exactly. There should be a gender equality, and we all are like, there should be no differentiation between people. All are humans, and yeah. So for the next is about violence against children, and before that, I want to keep stats. So violence against children affects more than 1 billion children around the world and costs societies up to US $7 trillion a year. And 50% of the world's children experience violence every year. And every 7 minutes, somewhere in the world, a child is killed by the violence. 1 in 10 children is sexually abused before the age of 18. And 1 in 3 internet users worldwide is a child, and 800 million of them use social media. Any child can become a victim of cyberbullying or online violence. So my question is that, being a peace advisor member of UNHCR, how are you tackling violence against children?
Yeah, it's true that the world as it is do look at children as assets and tools for violence instead of looking at them as opportunities and platform for positivity and generosity. And violence are in many forms, actually, not merely physical violence. I think sometimes we are very concentrated on more physical violence, political violence, and we forget about misinforming the child, misleading a child is actually violence. Because as long as a child appeals to your society and you keep quiet about it, there might be no war, there might be no displacements or trafficking, but as long as they have no voice, they're going through violence. And I think this is what it takes actually, maybe, I would say more than 90% of children in this world are facing violence every day. And then the worst form of violence is the violence against children, maybe through war, poverty, or disasters of that nature. That's where it becomes very difficult. So many kids have suffered. And I myself, I grew up in a region where there were over 66,000 children who were abducted and recruited as child soldiers. And of which a lot of them, up to now, they have not come back. They're missing, and they're really lost. But then I think we had millions of us who were displaced, who had nothing to eat, had nowhere to stay, had no education, had no social services. These were also very important part of the members of the society. But to some extent, the system as it is so, set up, tuned to a way that suits the international, what is presumably international methods and frameworks of defining what violence look like. And whatsoever below that is disregarded is not treated as violence. So yeah, I had to imagine how many people have suffered, but also had to imagine that to date as we have, with all the resources in the world, we get so much money, we get so much opportunities in the name of children, and we still allow them to suffer. We don't pay attention to their plight, to their needs, but also we don't tell them the truth. I think that it is violence if you don't tell your kids the truth. We are coming from a nation or the region with history. India and Uganda went through colonial eras, and we all went through all that. Then Africa, as Uganda and like another countries in the continent, have been through slave trade. And then this is the history that we know as Africans. And we do know for sure that had it not been because of all this deliberate human demolition of the continent, Africa would be far away from where it is today. We know it, but what about the children, the grandchildren of the former colonial powers? Had they taught the truth of the matter? They're not. And yet these are people being shaped to take on powers in their country to make policies that matters in the era of their grandparents' mismanagement or torture of a continent like Africa. Well, Africa remains poor. We are struggling. We are moving on with our own hardships here and then. But we do feel, had it been that there was opportunity, there was a deliberate effort to bring to light the history, but also with intent to heal, not to rejuvenate anger or bitterness or frustration or revenge, but with the intent to heal. So to me, I always, and I will always for sure and forever advocate that children should be given love, should be taught how to love, to care, to protect one another, not how to kill, how to destroy. And a child should not be taught that this such and such region, such and such tribe, such and such color, our enemies. No, that is violence. The moment our government teaches our children by saying that religion B is a religion of violence, that is violence against a child. Because you are indoctrinating a kid to grow up knowing that I have to hate that one, I have to hate that tribe because they are enemies. So violence against children should be expanded, not just limited to war or trafficking or physical violence. Emotional, psychological, historical violence are there. It needs to heal. But how do we heal it? Only when you tell the truth, when you accept the reality, and we agree to what we feel like. So that's basically what I would say.
Exactly, sir. And so what is your advocacy for all these victims, like in terms of women or children or old age people in your country, and victims, how they can access to the international criminal justice and legal systems, and how much effective is that?
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's true. We have been very actively involved in promoting the rights of the victims. The first era is to make sure we save life, provide immediate medical and psychological healing process for the children. And then we make sure that we also ensure they get the basic services, the social protection bit of it, from making sure their parents are safe, they are provided shelters, and above all, also advocate for the right, including their rights to participation before the international criminal justice, national and international criminal justice. So we have been so involved in mobilizing victims' participation before the International Criminal Court, supporting the population, giving them a chance to participate, to engage, but also, most importantly, making sure that the accused face justice. So we are not merely working to take justice to people, but we are working to bring, we are not merely taking justice to the most wanted, but we want to take the most wanted to justice, let them face justice. And that's why we're saying that, yes, for long they have talked about it, they have killed people, they have destroyed, they have shattered the future of the young generation and the community. The time will come when they have to face criminal charges and be held responsible for their criminal actions. So basically, that's what we do, and that's what we have been a lot involved in. Prosecution of the offenders, and ensuring we provide remedies and redress to the offended, the young people, the women, the children, the population that has been mutilated and tortured and brutally murdered. You know, people need justice, and this is also important in terms of deterring the recurrence, so that this is it. This cannot happen again, and that's an area that we've been so strong in. We've been so deeply involved in working on. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. One important point I noticed is that we always disregard child abuse. We disregard the violence, the psychological violence the children face. Like
Yeah.
it's like you are planting a seed of violence and you expect in turn they will do something amazing for your country. They will fight for
No.
you. So it's like you're like literally planting a seed which you think will grow into something different, but it's not like that.
Yeah.
You really need to understand the psychological and emotional pain a children has and the blueprint it has forever. Only
Yeah.
miracles can save them, and people like you and people like us. But if we raise this awareness about this,
Yeah.
I guess it'll be much better on large scale and it'll help better.
Yeah.
So next question is, what role does youth leaders play in the future of world where love and peace dominates war and violence? And your vision and plans for youth as a founder of Youth Empowerment Club, that is INET, on making this dream come true.
Yeah. 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 Thank you so much, and I appreciate the reflection on the raising a child. If you raise a child with peace, that child will become a peace child, and then will grow up to become a peace adult, a peaceful adult, and that is a guarantor for a peaceful society. And definitely, there's a very high likelihood that a child exposed to violence or a child survivor, a child victim will always most likely become an adult perpetrator, because they will grow with anger, with fatigue of despair, with frustration, with bitterness, with the urge to revenge. And in most cases, they will become perpetrators and repeat similar violence. And yes, yeah, I think for me also, you think about raising the future, the young people, the youth and children. I think a peaceful youthhood comes from a peaceful childhood. A peaceful childhood means a peaceful youthhood and a peaceful adulthood. And if that one doesn't happen, it is very likely that there will always be a violent adult, and that will not be good. So it's like planting seeds. If we get to the farms, we get to the gardens, and we find that there are kids, we can plant in these children the seeds of peace. And then as they grow, we nurture, we weed, we generate, as they germinate, we protect it from wildfire, with peace. And then as they grow as small trees of peacemakers, sooner or later they will become many, and they will form a forest of peacemakers. And that will provide a society where it's a society covered by the forest of peacemakers, and that means they will produce seeds of peace, shades of peace. They will cater and shelter for other wildlife and nature and all these kind of things. This is the kind of analogy that we need to present, that until it starts early in the child, until you nurture it, you protect it from violence that comes in, the violences of life, While we're appreciating today that there's beautiful forest, beautiful tree, we don't need to forget the pain that the little trees had, the tears in the eyes of the little tree. It's like think about, in a way, think about a butterfly, the life cycle of a butterfly. There's that egg, there's larva, there's pupa, there's adults. Yes, we all love butterflies. We all want to take butterflies and take photos with, beautiful and all that. But you don't look back to see the tears in the eyes of the caterpillar, the life a caterpillar. Before the butterfly, there was a caterpillar. And then the danger that was associated with the eggs being vulnerable and fragile, caterpillar being targeted, unwanted human beings spraying it because destroying its crops. and all this kind of demolition, and then coming into the state where they have to cocoon themselves, the vulnerability, the fragility, and then the insecurity that the butterfly has gone through to become a beautiful butterfly. That's what we have to pay attention to. Today we are here, we're celebrating our progress, our engagement at that level. But how much do we pay attention to our history? The better way to celebrate our story is to celebrate our history. Don't just admire my glory, but look through my story. Glory comes from story, and that's what we should do, and that's what we make it. So to me, until young people are given the right seats, right platforms, life is a springboard. Where we are is a springboard to jump to another level, and that's why to me, we thought, let's work and nurture a generation of peace builders. Let's mobilize and engage these young people to become peace lovers and greatest lovers of their communities and their people. And most importantly, we need to be able to give a chance to members of the society, especially people who feel marginalized. They're important. If we act with, I'm so allergic to unfairness in the system, in the society. I'm so allergic to that. I hope to one day see that society is tolerant to everybody. This unfairness of injustice and exclusion, inequality, intolerance, it has to go. That's why we're saying, let us coexist.
So, sir, my question is, what are the challenges faced by the refugees during a COVID pandemic, and to what extent has it affected them?
Yes, I think displacement is actually the most unpleasant things in life, because one, you lose your dignity, also you lose your capacity to protect yourself and stay safe. And as a refugeehood is pretty much about mobility. It's about traveling from one place to another. And with the restrictions that came up with COVID-19, it affected mobility, it affected not only mobility for the refugees, but also mobility for humanitarian intervention. A lot of resources couldn't go, but also the humanitarian aid workers were evacuated. They were forced to leave their countries, even though they were looking after the refugees, they were forced to leave their countries. And then the question comes, what next? The refugees were left hanging in most cases, but also I feel like in as much as COVID-19 has been so bad, and it is still very, very bad, but there's one thing we can't forget, we can't miss the learning opportunity that came with it. Huge learning opportunity came with it that, one, if we want to support the world, we cannot limit the intervention towards a particular section of the society. It has to be mobilizing, galvanizing the entire human community in poor and rich nations, not only in rich nations to help the poor, but it should be in poor and rich nations, because now we know today it was COVID creating all this. What if next time it's satellite that is down, planes can't fly, or air can't work anymore, the system, the navigation is not possible. So this is it. But also we're looking forward to, possibilities there will be earthquake that destroys all the airports and everything, and all these kind of things will happen. So it's just a wake-up call that. And as much as we are addressing the COVID issues, we have missed a lot to learn previously, but this time we shouldn't miss to learn from the challenges that come with when global mobility is affected, but also give people a chance to live in their homes. When people are in the camps, life is hectic, life is tragic. You can't lock down because you have to get food. And also you cannot social distance because there's nothing. You have no money, economic hardship, social hardship, political hardship, all the things are there. And besides, things that keeps refugees together is bigger than food. It has to come with social gathering and commitment and talking to one another, interfacing morally, socially, politically. These are reasons that refugees' life can be seen as to be a little better. But if all these are affected by COVID, it becomes a big issue. So it's one challenge, but we hope that we have learned from it. We are going to help empower the local people. We raise the local humanitarian leadership and promote the local humanitarian response spirit, so that we don't have to wait for Geneva, we don't have to wait for New York to decide. before we can step up and help people. We need to prepare people to help people, and youth should be at the forefront of this humanitarian leadership. So to me, it would be about setting and strengthening the world humanitarian leadership with focus on youth. How can we raise a new generation of young humanitarian leaders? This is what we should work on.
Exactly, sir. And this COVID pandemic has like very difficult, but we have learned many things and understanding the situations, and it brings up the new change in us.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true.
Thank you, sir. I saw one of your interviews with the news channel, and I loved what you mentioned there, that I turned my sufferings and hardships into leadership, into becoming a leader of Youth Empowerment Club, that is INET. I guess this is the huge inspiration to the youth of the world, where everyone is stuck in their problems and sufferings. I guess they can learn from. Is there any one message you want to give to the youth through this channel?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. I think to the young people, we cannot avoid situation. Sometimes we're too powerless to control it, but we just need to use every opportunity, every challenges as an opportunity to grow. But also, most importantly, our suffering, our pain, our cry can be a springboard for growth, a springboard for innovation. And also, with the help of technology that young people are exposed to today, I think it is very, very important that we innovate to protect humanity. We don't need to innovate with so much skills and capacity to destroy humanity. Why should we be innovating if we cannot shoot and kill Corona? Why are we innovating to produce all these MiG fighters, jets, and all these kind of weapons with mass killing capacity? And you forget about people who are suffering that should be fed. So young people, whether in India or in Africa or around the world, the most important thing is let's put politics aside and we have to take our path and pursue peace and justice. And most importantly, we need to invest in our readiness to enhance our ability to respond. We have to be responsible for the situation that will come. What I can say lastly is, it is true we may not be responsible for the past injustice, but it is our responsibility to make sure that it does not happen again. That is our responsibility. And if such injustice happens now, then we are responsible. So that's what I would want to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for
Thank
the
you so much,
inspiring.
sir. I want to end with this small quote. This peace comes from within, and peace cannot be achieved through violence. It can only be attained through understanding. And
yeah,
with this, we would like to end this wonderful session with Mr. Victor Ochen. Thank you, sir, for joining us and inspiring.
It's a pleasure. Thank you so much for the opportunity, and I wish everybody a very happy moment.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you so much.